Kermit Zone with our very special guest star, you, the listener. Yay! It's time to fetch your headphones. It's time to check the mics. It's time to chat pop culture on the Kermit Zone tonight. It's time now for a shake-up. It's time to go sit tight. It's time to start recording on the Kermit Zone tonight. Why do we always come here? I guess we'll never know. It's like a kind of torture to have to tape the show. So now let's get things started.
Why don't you get things started?
It's time to get things started on the most sensational, conversational, observational, confrontational. This is what we call the Kermit Zone. Welcome everybody to another Pop Culture Talk Zone. I'm Kermit the Grog. I'm here with my friends. We're doing a smooth stream. It's been a while, but we're back. To my right, in visual, actual space, we got Miss Nova Rose.
Hello. Good to see you all.
And to my right or right, but no more correct, in just, not a synonym for correct, just in distance and placement in space and time, one forward progress.
Hello, everyone. It's me back again. Gotta love doing another Talk Zone.
Yeah, and on a smooth stream, no less.
That's right.
Long time. I would have called this episode "Long Time No Smooze," but we already did that, so it's just don't smooze me now. And to my right, visually on the screen, but not in actual space, but in mostly time, amidst the little couple of seconds lost with lag, we have my good friend Riftwing Designs.
Woo!
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be not only smoozing, but also doing a talk zone. So thank you very much.
That's also been a while. Excited to have you on board.
Yes.
And speaking of which, actually, today's episode is your baby. So I will let you take the proverbial mic for a moment and lay out what we'll be talking about today. Whoosh. Nice catch.
All right. Thank you. So if you are visually watching this, I am wearing a crazy raccoon mask because we're going to be talking about some animals, and specifically in a lesser known cartoon, Kipo and the Age of the Wonderbeasts, which was on Netflix, and it's complete. So if you haven't seen it yet, please definitely check it out, and you can always pause it and come back. It's not too long to binge, actually.
Yeah, 3 seasons.
10 episodes?
I want to say about 30 or so episodes, give or take.
And it is
Total,
a beautiful,
not per
beautiful cartoon. Yeah. When I started to watch it, I was immediately captured by the animals, right? Because it's based off of a post-apocalyptic theme where some of the animals are like crazy beasts, and some of them are just cute anthropomorphic creatures. So we're going to talk a little bit about them and the show in general. And I want to pass it back to Forward to talk about the theme we chose, because I know you can pronounce it and explain it better than I can.
Okay, so we've kind of subtitled this episode Kipo and the Age of Archetypes. Because one of the things we discovered, and we all discussed as we watched the series together, was how all of these different creatures in this world seem to embody different archetypes. Now, what do we mean by that? So different kind of a typical characteristic of that would be embodied here. We've talked about archetypes in past things that we've done a lot of times with Pony and the main 6, where you have the you know, kind of the bookworm.
Here's the bookworm.
Archetype.
Here's the tomboy.
Athlete. Yeah. But you have this happening here in Kipo with the various factions that you find here of these anthropomorphic creatures who have evolved from this kind of at the beginning of the series kind of unknown whatever event that kind of moved the humans underground and kind of made the surface this dwelling place for these mega beast creatures or hybrid creatures, anthropomorphized animals. And it's interesting here the way that we get these archetypes developed here. And I don't want to steal your thunder right away, but I definitely...
Please do.
One of the great things that we discovered here is you can really pinpoint a lot of it through various musical stylings.
And scenes, yeah.
Yeah, and
costumes are amazing.
Mm-hmm. So there's so many different factions we can talk about on here and kind of what they represent and within there. I'm gonna since somebody gave me the mic, I'll kind of throw this out there to everybody here. What was it about the series that made each of you kind of gravitate towards this and this is so interesting?
For me, I think it was the post-apocalyptic setting. That's kind of my jam. Big Fallout fan. And of course, being a furry, that's kind of a definite attraction for me. And just the overall, the story and characters are incredible.
I mean, I'd have to agree. On top of all that, even just past the Fury thing, the designs on all of them and the ideas that it's not just here's a faction of animals. It's here's a faction of animals like we described, kind of themed on a musical genre or scene. Like we have the I'm looking at our document now. If I'm getting ahead of ourselves, we have the umlaut snakes that are very just sort of that 80s metal, rock out, kiss, paint your face, shred the guitar, like that, and that kind of communicates and describes both their look, their design, but also kind of how they react to other people in the universe. It kind of describes, and I guess our archetype, it communicates and it helps describe what they're about. That they're a little bit more, it may be intense than some of the other factions out there.
Yeah, and for me, that's 100% it too. It's the music and the outfits. It captures in a really fun way what each species has mutated into. And I think the first one I really got whoa, this is crazy, is the one that I kind of love and hate at the same time, the Timbercats, right? Because there's this Paul Bunyan character called Yum Yum Hammerpaw, and his theme song, his song is the best. It's just a tall tale. It's a lumberjack song, and all of the cats in the background act like cats. They're chasing after balls of string and getting distracted by shiny things, and at the same time they're wielding axes, right? It's so fun.
It's really cool. It feels kind of like you started a D&D campaign, and you looked around and you picked an animal, and then you picked a thing on your desk, and then you kind of combined them ideologically. So you have the cat thing of I think we have the yarn balls and chasing things and stuff like that. But then you have that lumberjack thing of they live in this giant tree, and they eat pancakes, and they wear what's the
plaid.
pattern? They wear plaid, and you kind of get the dynamics of both of these things combined together. And I think, at least for me, that's what makes a lot of these factions really interesting, is that you get two archetypes or ideas put to mashed together, and sometimes that can create kind of interesting things when you combine them.
Yeah, most definitely. I think for me, one of the biggest things in the series here, and we're gonna keep exploring this theme here, is in a series like this where it has so many different kind of archetypes throughout, it definitely has a lot of themes of identity throughout it here. And as somebody watching it, you can kind of find, even if you don't understand or fit in with one faction here, you might with another, and you might find pieces from all this. So it kind of gets you in that place of where do I identify within this world? You can play those kind of games with yourself. The other thing that I love that this series did is there was amazing diverse representation, not just in the animals, but in the human characters as well.
Amen.
Yeah, there was a variety of different races, a variety of different genders, sexuality, and let's face it here. If you've seen the show, the little budding bromance we get with Benson and Troy, Troyson for life. It's the cutest thing.
It is very cute.
It's adorable, and getting to see, and everything is just, it's set in a world, and I think that's one of the benefits of a post-apocalyptic setting, of kind of that thing where the world has reached that point where a lot of the things that, you know, like this homophobia, racism, things that are such an issue, when you get into a post-apocalyptic setting, it almost makes it such that you can create a new square one, a new level playing ground where people can realize, like, okay, there's bigger things to worry about than homophobia, racism, etc. Like, I don't have to be afraid of somebody because they're different. Like, there's bigger things to worry about in the world and kind of coming together.
But that's still a big theme of it. But instead of it being done by things that we understand as human, it's done by the animal factions.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
The humans are scared of the upper world of all these different animal factions, and they're mistrustful of humans, and they're mistrustful of each other. And I feel like, in a way, with that post-apocalyptic, that you can kind of get that social things down to one, but, like, people are still people. And even in this case, sentient beings are still sentient beings, I guess, because I don't know how far or not far your definition of people, if that's just humans or not. But I feel like it's like we fix those ones, so it kind of simplifies a little bit more, but it's still like a really important thing for that setting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say that what's interesting is even though all of the current human problems are gone, right, the new prejudice is like, what if someone like Kipo, who's part mute, all of a sudden that hatred gets turned on her for something that we would never think, you know? And even though some people could accept it, others, like Wolf, could not.
Yeah. Wolf is definitely an interesting character here because Wolf is one, above all else, where we get to explore themes of trauma. Because of basically being kind of like alone to fend for herself, and then getting what she thinks is being welcomed into this family of wolves who are only building her up to literally hunt her down and eat her. And
trauma with a capital T.
Yeah. And then so that's gonna make you not trust anybody. Let's face, like, it would make you hard to trust, and that's that great thing of that juxtaposition between her character and Kipo, where Kipo wants to trust everybody, Wolf wants to trust nobody, and they kind of have to work off each other to find the correct balance to move forward.
Yeah, neither of those work out, especially here where, you know, sometimes you can trust people and sometimes needing to extend that hand of friendship could fix a problem where mistrust wouldn't, but also sometimes that can get you into situations that put you and people you care about in a lot of danger if you're not able to kind of form those barriers properly.
And we see both throughout the series, really.
Yeah, that's why they play off each other so well.
Exactly. So we've got a lot of, there's so many factions to talk about. We definitely talked about the Timber Cats a little here.
Well, since we talked about the one that kind of got us interested, let's all talk about our favorites, right? I mean, you're going right? So there are so many to choose from, first off. And then there's so many ways to relate. And the thing that I wanted to say about that is like the nostalgia factor for some of us that were around for the genres, like I am dressed as an 80s aerobic raccoon. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a little older, and it was amazing. And I'm wearing my slap bracelets.
Nice.
And the music, right? We're gonna have music when we do our aerobics after this. The costumes, the neon, it was all perfect, and it was a really fun episode. Twin Beaks, when you got to go into the exercise hall and help the raccoons be strong and empowering, like that's 100% my jam. So I was totally fueled by nostalgia for my favorite faction, which again is the fitness raccoons.
They were definitely a fun find when we were watching along.
Oh yeah. They were definitely entertaining, and granted, some of this we're going to talk about some things that happen in the series, obviously. So a little bit of a spoiler alert at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything too major.
But there's some great relationship building you see with one of the main fitness raccoons in season 3. And the one human and some other characters you don't expect. And that's one of the things about this, and about being a series with different archetypes, kind of this whole theme of like, how can we get different types of people to come together? Where, kind of going back to what we talked about before, where we're not head on saying racism and sexism and homophobia necessarily, but we are tackling the same issues through this metaphor of the different archetypes.
It's the other.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's a story about the other, whatever that other may be.
Yeah,
and however you draw those lines. It's still a concept that comes back through humanity and through storytelling, which is what we're seeing here.
So, what's your
Yeah.
favorite?
Well, actually, I want to give Nova Rose a moment to talk because she hasn't been able to get a word in. Rose, what are your favorite factions in Kipo?
Gosh. You know, it's funny. I'm looking at this and I'm like, on the thing it says glam rock hamsters, and I'm like, which...
They didn't get up too much. I don't think they can talk, can they?
I don't remember.
They were squeaking,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're kind of just squeaky.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But I guess it's not one that I necessarily connect with, but I just thought they were an absolute blast. Was the squirrels. I
Oh.
love the
Squirrels?
Yeah.
And that fit into the animal stereotype too.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
squirrels who they were very personable, chatty, but very forgetful, and
And hid their treasure.
would hide their treasures just as squirrels do. And often, I think that I know that there's actual statistics on this, but like squirrels hide their nuts, their acorns, whatever, to the point where like most of the ones that they hide, they will never find again.
Huh?
That's a real thing.
But other than the squirrels, I also really liked the Newton wolves.
Oh gosh. yeah.
I've always had a big fascination with space. So that tickled me, especially with their amazing raps.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition within that archetype that gets created here, because this is one of the interesting fusions, I think, because you have this faction who is we're all about science and the truth and looking for answers and all this, juxtaposed against wolves who are known as more fierce
Pack animals,
pack
cutthroat.
animals, and they're this pack animal. They're fierce, but they also are trying to do the science thing, which is usually associated with more like a softer personality type. So it was kind of interesting to see the ferocious scientists as this kind of, this personality type throughout here, and they kind of bounce back between, and I think a lot of it is harkening back to that pack mentality of like what works for us in our pack is all that matters.
Like billions and billions was just.
Ah.
Yeah.
I love those two.
Mm-hmm.
Played by, what is it? It's John Hodgman, and I think it's the RZA, isn't it?
The RZA. Oh, I think the
The
RZA was in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he is one of the 2 billions, which I thought was a really neat combination of two people to kind of play the leads of the wolves.
I love them even more now.
There was so many. There were a lot
so
of
many humans.
music personalities that were in it here. Joan Jett was in it.
Yeah, I believe she was one of the umlaut
She
snakes.
was Camille. Yeah.
Oh.
Love
Yeah.
the umlaut
The
snakes.
Rockin' Snakes were definitely a highlight, I think, for me.
And they were jamming. Like, it was just such cool music.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I apologize. I'm now seeing it was not the RZA, it was the Jizza that was playing
The
billions.
Jizza, that's right.
It was close. I apologize.
Jizza, yeah.
No, and I think somewhat of it a little bit too, if we're going in that science thing, but that kind of ferocity of like a wolves, of it's like all, because they're kind of a vaguely villainous faction. Like it takes them a while to kind of completely come around to join with Kipo's little band. And not be kind of more predatory to everybody else. And I feel like it's science, and it fits that pack thing, but without kind of that, I'm going to say human element, which is not a really good term when we're talking about a bunch of animal people, but like I don't know, what's another word that you could use that doesn't imply humanness necessarily? Like soul, like emotion maybe? Like it's hard science without like the soul element, we'll say, because I don't know what else to, I mean, I don't know, what's a word that captures that? Because this is the problem now, is when we're talking about does humanity extend upon just humans,
The humans.
every creature?
Well, and that's part of the thing of the show, and that's kind of the metaphor that being laid out here. Hamufa.
Hamufa.
Yeah,
Hamufa. Which was human mute something friendship alliance. I don't remember what the U is.
It's Kipo's like collection of getting the humans and the animals together to form an alliance.
It's gonna bother me now.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna Google it literally as we speak because this is bothering me.
The best part is they make a joke about the acronym being so bad, but it's awesome that the acronym doesn't make sense.
The Human Mute Ultimate Friendship Alliance. I was
Ultimate.
really
It's always
close.
the modifiers. It's always the modifiers that'll catch you.
Yeah. So that was the thing though. It's like having all these different personality types that arguably you would expect to be at odds with one another, and then you add in the fact that they are, mutations of animals, and you kind of add in things about the natural order of the food chain, and putting, personality and and consciousness in there where it wasn't before, so to speak. And it's like, whoa, so many layers. You want to say something?
I've had something brewing in my brain that might shake things up a bunch.
Okay, do you want
Ready
to
to
do it
shake.
now, or should we finish saying
If we've
what
got
our favorites?
current thoughts, let's stick where we are, because
Yeah.
we're gonna stick within Kipo. But
Did we get your favorite faction?
I've not actually spoken about my favorites. My favorites are the rats from Ratland.
Oh,
Took
love the
mine.
rat.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
for
Go
it.
ahead. I have another one I'll talk about.
Besides being like a big fan of Disney and kind of theme parks, which they're definitely kind of a send up to, rats, Mickey, ha ha ha. I just really like them because it's like I'm somebody who is big on like being a host and entertaining, and that's kind of their whole shtick, is like bringing them and giving people that moment of joy, of fun, of it's like we'll take care of it. The van shows up, they're very affable. And I was big fans of them. I was very devastated when Ratland got destroyed.
Also, they were Kipoing before Kipo.
Well, and that's
Yeah, a little bit.
where I was gonna go with it, because as somebody who's always been kind of a dreamer and is always like, like when I was a kid being like, why can't we all just get along type of person. That's just who I've been my whole life. So like seeing that of just, these creatures who wanted to just be like, let's just make a place where everybody can get away, and maybe this puts that little spark in there of like, in here you're safe, why can't you just take something away from this? And I'm like,
Why can't
that's
this
so
extend
great.
out?
Exactly. And they just they do so many great things. I want to just say, I guess I was gonna say 3 words, a letter and 2 words that I just have to say. K-pop narwhals. Oh,
Why do they
with
have...
abs.
Why do they have abs?
They have abs.
Because they have to have abs. That's the K-pop part, I guess. I don't know.
Let me just say, Oceans Above is definitely in the playlist for our aerobics.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's
exciting.
great. Like, just it was one of those things going into season 3. You're like, okay, what else is there they can do? And K-pop narwhals was not on my list,
But very on point.
but
Very good.
it was so entertaining, and that the kind of the lead one that we got to spend the most amount of time with, that interesting moment of kind of like his, I would say, crooning almost on when he gets captured there, kind of allowing that connectivity of like that point to be made of, you can find your connectivity with somebody like through so many different means. Like it could just be as simple as hearing a song.
Yeah, art
And you
connects
connect
people.
over it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, art does connect people. How much of a connection has it brought all of us, really?
Certainly. It's literally connecting us right now. That's what brought us together
Yeah.
to talk about this show.
Mm-hmm.
Is the piece of art that is the show.
Absolutely. So, we talked a lot about the animals here. We've talked a little bit about the humans, but mostly about the animals here. The humans definitely make up an interesting, different set of archetypes, I think, as well,
Yeah.
within there. Because you have Kipo, who's, our hero,
Our
our
main
main
character.
character, who's literally and figuratively there to bridge the gap. To combine the mutes and the humans, both literally in her genetics, and but the fact that she can become a mega jaguar, but also remain human, but also kind of that struggle to bring people together more on in a metaphorical sense, in a like we can get along, not that we have to genetically be something, and but also looking at her internal struggles in balancing being the Mega Jaguar and being human and not losing herself within just one. Because that was a whole arc that they had to endeavor upon of like, you can become this Mega Jaguar, but what if you lose yourself in this?
Yeah.
And then you lose sight of what your goal was, and you just kind of, I don't want to use the word feral, but almost.
It makes it not just a fix-it button in the terms of the story.
Exactly.
It makes it have a lot more weight to it.
Mm-hmm. You know who we haven't brought up yet that I think we have to talk about for a moment? Dave. Dave, granted, I mean, he's partially there as the comedic effect.
Yes.
But
sometimes those characters, because you're spending so much time with them, like, that's where you can get kind of that unexpected but still constantly there, like, that's where you get the big meanings from, because it's like, here's this character that you've spent all of this time with that you thought was, oh, they're just funny, but it's like, when you spend time with characters, or when you spend with people in real life, you form those connections, so that when that moment happens where, you know, the crux of the story is turning on them, you're like, oh my gosh, there's all this emotion and meaning here there that wasn't before, because it was just, I wasn't thinking about it. And I think I think Dave is a really good thing of that, where you don't think too much of him. It's like, oh, he's funny, he's around, he's got his bits, but then it's like, when the themes really start clicking in, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is what he was like, this is what his character was about this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it really easy.
He gets a couple of big moments, especially towards the end of the series there. He gets that one episode where he's narrating that whole story, trying to bring everybody back together and inspire them. And it is a ridiculous episode. I mean that in the best way possible. Because in his kind of silly Dave way, he does manage to bring the goal of bringing everyone together. And that's kind of that thing of reminding you that sometimes the most unexpected things, the most unexpected individuals can be the ones that spark that connectivity, that big change you needed.
Yeah, Dave is a demonstration of resiliency, both literally and figuratively. A lot of his comedy is that he dies and is reincarnated because he's just an endless life cycle of some sort of bug mutant. At the same time, the fact that he can do that, I mean, he sacrifices himself for others. He also learns to be resilient, harness his own strength, because before he had a lot of performance anxiety, right? And it's just interesting how sometimes the timing can be good and sometimes the timing can be absolutely horrible. But no matter what, he continues to grow and learn for the hundreds and thousands of life cycles that he's been through, which is always something. When you're faced with change, you can either stand against it or you can go with it. And especially because they face so many different things, it's really interesting to see what he wants out of life, right? And how he can get there. And he thought, well, when there was the Mulholland tardigrade bear dreamland, right? He thought he just wanted to be famous and relax in a mansion forever. But, you know, it's that whole gotta tie in friendship is magic.
Mm-hmm. There's, what was that? That David, the Benson and Dave pool party.
Yeah.
All boys.
Mm-hmm.
All boys.
I attended Benson and Dave's hot summer pool party, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt or whatever.
It was, yeah.
It was wonderful. But I'm glad you brought up Mulholland. One of I think just a very interesting character here. To talk about kind of I'd almost say like an evolution of thought, an evolution of like reimagining who you can be. Because
I could see that.
Yeah, because
He started off as a villain, really.
Yeah, and through the experience, kind of learns that he can be more than what he thought he could be, and go explore the world. And he says, "I'm going to go explore the world," and it pays off. He literally does. And when he comes back in, it's poignant.
It's an important ally now instead of
Yeah.
a villain or a trouble.
And the big thing is because he made that choice himself. Is it himself or themself? I don't even.
It's it's sentient water bugs, like.
So I'm kind of
because it's it's like Q, but
It's a
not
collective,
through time.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
it's a
almost,
continuum of Mulholland.
I would argue that Mulholland, unless they actually refer to him as he, could almost be a non-binary.
It's also
concept.
whatever. It's like it's based off of Mulholland Drive. What's the director's name?
They're a hippie water bear.
The guy who made Twin Peaks. Like, it's based off of things that are very strange and not psychedelic in like the hippie sense, but like in a very just sort of like strange.
David Lynch.
David Lynch. I'm thinking people call things Lynchian. Like, that's kind of I knew that reference going into this, and it's like that's why his stuff is always very, very dreams based and kind of odd and kind of out of touch with reality sometimes. And I think that he's kind of he forms that interesting thing of that escape from this reality almost to other possibilities that he then kind of goes on to learn that he's got other choices.
I think, are we okay to move on from Mulholland? Everybody?
I'm good. I said my piece.
I think the other interesting level of kind of different types of character here is specifically in the humans, and I feel like you have more the children/teenage group, and then you have the adults.
Yep.
And there is definitely that kind of that
generation gap.
Yeah, like it's a conversation about that generation of kind of when one generation has been, let's face it, stuck underground this whole time, kind of afraid when getting, I mean, if you lived your entire life underground and then kind of had to come to the surface and were kind of constantly surrounded by all this stuff, you could understand the fear and being driven by fear and being able to fall under the trappings of somebody like Dr. Amelia in season 3.
Are the parents the original generation that goes underground? Do we know that?
We don't think so, because
Okay.
Dr. Amelia's parents in the flashbacks were still underground, right?
I believe so.
Okay, because the generational thing I can see, besides just like these are the ones have always lived underground, is that some of it is that a generation can suffer a trauma that a younger generation does not know of, and I feel like that can kind of shape your thing. And here it's just like the older generation, especially the scientists, understood and knew the dangers of the mega beasts above, in the world above, where the new generation doesn't. And I feel like you could draw, I mean, there's any number of ones you can draw to our own life, but one that always jumps to mind is like people born after the Cold War, and just like the fact that that isn't part of our knowledge base, or will shape how you feel about things. However much you do or don't think that it's actually affecting you, like that can affect you. I mean, we grew up with like 9/11 happening, and it's like kids that were born after that have just a different, even just living in a different world than other people when the world has a drastic change. Sometimes you do need that new generation to come in who don't have those scars of the past to kind of heal things over and kind of push things forward in a way that, you or whatever other generation isn't as able to, because they're kind of dealing with their own traumas and pains. And I feel like that's what I like, that divide between the kind of younger kids and the adults, because you get to see that mix. It's not that it's just like, oh, the adults are stupid, they're dumb, they don't get it. It's like, no, they have their own experiences they went through. We were actually just talking about this in a different way before we actually started this, but something completely different is that like different generations experience, I mean, just growing up differently, and then that shapes their worldviews as they get older. And each generation, by virtue of the way the world changes and technology changes and what's available to them, changes how they think about things. And then they get older and they shape the world. And the next generation comes up. It's like being, like we were just talking about, just between like boomers and millennials, which is a topic we go back to a lot, of just like, we grew up with the internet where they didn't have as many opportunities to run into different stories and viewpoints than their own. And it's not like that was like, they didn't do that by choice. There's nothing like villainous behind it from your average person, but just like that was their experience. But like people who grew up with the internet, it's like you can't not bump into other people's stories and feelings and experiences. And that just changes the way that you think about things and approach the world. And I feel like, and admittedly smaller scale, because it's literally just being underground or not, which is still a big thing. that's what we have here. This is a generation that saw the dangers of what was up above and then stayed under, and then you have the new generation who hasn't seen that yet and can kind of go up and start, who isn't necessarily instantly scared of the animals. They haven't seen those dangers themselves, and they can start. That's why Kipo can kind of start rebuilding those connections.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least until the giant mega monkey came through and demolished everything.
And then you get the new traumas, and there you go.
Well, and I think it really goes back to your point about that being a trauma that occurred to a group of people. Again, you can understand where the fear sets in, where somebody who does lead by fear can kind of latch on, and
that was the subplot of the last season.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Is that, what are you going to latch onto, hope or fear?
It's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And it is ironic how we had a prom, and it was kind of one of those, like, another one of those moments where you'd almost feel like, well, this seems like a really silly gimmick, and in some ways, yeah, but it works. Sometimes things that are cliche and silly, if you do them the right way and have the right kind of viewpoint with it, they're there for a reason,
They bring up ideas in your head. Just a party wouldn't have the same picture. When somebody says prom, you know what's going on. I didn't even go to prom, and I know what prom is. I know what makes up prom. Like, we've been seeing it. It is just I don't want to say cliche, but I guess it fits that. Like, it's just a unit of something that exists that we're all keyed on mostly the same thing on. We have all of our own personal experiences with it, but when you just use it as a shorthand, you go, okay, I know what you're talking about. Prom.
Oh, you were just yawning. I thought you were.
Prom, I thought you said yawn.
So what I'll say is something that we have to mention, even though it isn't really a part of the entire conversation, is who we thought was a bad guy, who wasn't a bad guy, but what was a major part underneath everything, and that was Scarlamange. And it's really interesting because that was one of the least important parts of the whole show, but it tied everything together.
At the end of the day, it doesn't work without Scarlamange.
No.
And he's the focus for our season 1 villain.
Yes.
And learning throughout the series and all of the process of everything that happens there, of how he became who he is. And that it's so interesting from that perspective of that, like, take away the fact of, that he's a simian, and you just look at him in just regular kind of like terms of just another person. It's that, like, that kind of curiosity we all have of, like, what makes a monster, like, what makes a villain. And I would argue it's like, they say the best villains are the ones where you can understand them. Like, you can understand how they got there and what their motives are. And this is one instance where, yes, you can absolutely understand. They point blank show you his growth / descent.
Ascent and then descent.
And then having the redemption arc, which is not, it's not a straight line, which I think is beautiful, because that's more realistic, because we don't usually make change in, a consistent,
No.
means.
It's not a consistent line. You're not always improving, and then you'll never do those mistakes from before. You're just less likely to make them.
You've talked about this a lot with, like, Fluttershy.
Mm-hmm.
Of where, what was the line? I think you know it.
That you can't learn a lesson once and then just expect to completely change who you are. Like, that doesn't work like that. You need to kind of go through a long process of trying, stumbling every once in a while, and eventually it sticks. Like, but you can't fault a person for stumbling every once in a while when they're trying to improve themselves. It happens.
And even then, it took a little while for Scarlamange to really want to improve.
I mean, you could argue Stockholm Syndrome for a little bit, but yeah.
Although I will say that's one of my most favorite episodes is when they're like trying to get him out of the cage or whatever, and he's just being a giant butt.
Yeah. His humor is very nice.
Smash, run away.
It's the way it starts off with his character and where it ends are just, they're so different. And
yeah,
but it's great because part of that too in any series is you kind of have to have that for evolution, because if you have like, you know, like a villainous character who just remains the same and doesn't really change at all or doesn't evolve or doesn't have different facets to it, then well, that's definitely a stagnation effect for your entire series.
It's not as interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that is interesting though is kind of seeing the parallels between Scarlemagne and Wolf, where they both have that trauma of basically being betrayed by the people closest to them,
By the other
Yeah.
family.
I don't want to say no. I mean, yes, but not what I'm like the other. I'm doing air quotes for audio listeners, and I'm saying race, but I wish I had a better word for it. I guess species, because Charlemagne was kind of betrayed by the humans that brought him up, and Wolf was betrayed by the wolves that brought them up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that was best reflected towards the end when they were building the float, where like they're kind of like, what do we do with Amelia? And whereas Kipo is like, let's, you know, give her the benefit of the doubt, and then like both of them are just like, our past traumas basically tell us this is a bad idea.
There's a lot of it shows just how our lives are, you know, formed by a collection of our experience that will help guide our future actions and beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about Scarlemagne for an entire social science
gosh, yes,
episode,
we
I'm
could.
sure.
Oh yeah.
Kermit, I know you wanted to shake it up. Did we shake it, or are you ready to shake?
No, I'm ready to shake because we're getting towards the end, and I wanted to get into this, and it's just sort of like brain thought shotgun blast. So I'm going to do the best I communicate it. So I'm going to open this up with: do you think the situation could have been? Do you think the animals would have formed up their own without Kipo and the humans coming up and making those connections?
No.
Not it didn't have to be Kipo, but there had to be a force along those lines.
Okay.
There could have been an animalistic force that you know,
But there wasn't. Even
Right.
Well,
however
Scarlemagne was
long
going
they're
to
all-
do it, but Scarlemagne was going to do it through force and not the right way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have actually made connections. Even while he was doing it, it wasn't working. They were still, all the factions he worked with were still at each other's throats. They weren't working together.
True.
That's
Yeah.
why, I mean, it helps reinforce that theme. The point I want to make of it is like a bigger storytelling thing is it reminds me, it kind of echoes of times past where you see like movies and films where, I mean, this is why it's like, I don't know how to exactly phrase it in my head, but it's like you'd see like, oh, we'll say the white person goes to Africa or Asian land, and that they are the force that solves the issue. I think like white savior is the name of the trope. And that's not literally what's happening here, but I feel like it's this other species, race, whatever you want to call it, has to come in to fix the problem for the animals. But then there's also the added complexity that, like, technically Kipo is of them, but that's not what makes her good at making those connections. And it's complicated, and I thought of it in the middle of our conversation, and I haven't, like, formulated it into, like, a full thought. Mostly just sort of, like, a meditation of, like, this force that is an outside force that is unlike the things having the troubles is the thing that needs to come in and fix the troubles, which is like a storytelling trope from forever.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna go retract my judgment and actually say yes. Now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, is if Scarlemagne actually managed to completely go through with his plans, and capture both the humans and the mutants and basically made them serve him, I history has basically told us of basically like people will come together for a common enemy, and I think
Sure.
that could have definitely fueled them to start cooperating with each other to overthrow Scarlemagne.
But they didn't. He'd already had been in power. They were all squabbling on their own. They have to, like...
True, but I feel like it hasn't fully realized yet. Like, it hasn't... Like, when they're in the Colosseum there and everyone's being mind controlled, like, I think, like, that's when stuff like that will happen. But, like, when everyone's still more or less free and roaming around as they please, then it's not breeding.
I think it's a matter
This
of
is more
it would
like
be
a storytelling
it would be
structure and
it
not
would
like
be
a
a matter
literal
of
story.
time.
Well, that's more.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could say that of anything, but the story that is taking place is this. And I always feel like in those stories that when you have to, and I've been thinking about this recently and haven't come to my own conclusion, is that it's like, it always feels like it makes the other groups, races, species, whatever way of othering this occurs, that this outside force comes in, it always makes them, in my mind, feel like they are smaller and less capable of, like, you needed an outside source to come in to fix this problem. But there's also something to that, because it's like something at rest is going to stay at rest, and you need something new to come in and shake it up. So it has to be something, and it always makes sense in a story. Like, that's like where these problems occur from by virtue of the mechanics of how the story goes, is that you need somebody who isn't of the universe for the viewer reader to follow, so that you are following along with somebody who also doesn't fully know what the setting and the people are about. So you get to learn it with them. So, like, that's why they're an outsider that doesn't fit those things, but they're also solving the problem because they're the protagonists, and that's what they're there to do in the story. And it makes it weird. It's just like, well, the animals are capable, but they're all very insular. They have their one, like, each one, like we talked about. It's like, I love that the animals all have, like, a very clear, like, design idea, and they're based on tropes, and it makes them fun and interesting to find and befriend. But it's like, they're not as multifaceted as our human characters. All of them get a lot more... I mean, sometimes the animals do. I mean, Dave gets a lot, as we've talked about. Like, not that they can't learn lessons, but it's like, they're not as varied. A lot of them are a lot more one-note and tropey or two-dimensional, however you want to describe it, than the humans that come in and help fix the problem. I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know what to do with those thoughts yet. That's why I'm kind of pitching them out into the world and going, here you go, I don't know, something's going on here.
I think it is the fact that they are animals, and they've only had so much time of even being sentient to formulate a society, that they aren't to the point where humans are at that juncture. So it's almost like, imagine taking, going back in time, and using modern societal standards to try to reform ancient times. You know what I mean?
No.
I also think it could also be a mindset where I feel like it's very important for cultures to, like, interact with each other.
Bump up against each other, yeah.
Because, like, it's so easy to basically become stagnated in your ways, because it's like, I guess I look at, like, certain cultures that are a little bit more closed off.
Insular.
Like, I mean, like, Japan has gotten a lot better with this, but it's like, some of the stuff, like, I've heard plenty of Japanese people even say, like, why are we doing these things anymore? Like, they're archaic.
And we'll still say the same things in America, and I see things, from my Canadian friends, from my German friends. Everybody's got kind of their thing where at one point you go, okay, like, we can learn from each other. How do we move forward?
Here is an example of this not being like this. Either we can become that, or we can clearly see it's able to become something else.
But then the flip side is, it's like, they do a bunch of stuff that I'm like, wow, that is actually really cool. I wish we would incorporate that. So it's kind of like dropping our bad traits and, like, sharing some of the stuff that has worked for us or for them. And I think that's kind of like the thing with Kipo, is it's like, it's kind of just sharing those cultures, sharing those ideas. So it's like, the animals will still remain being their cultures, but, like, they're more now learning, like, a human's ability to share and interact with others.
They'd all be further along if they work together, but they don't, so they aren't. And that's why you need an outside force. It's like Sim. If you're stuck on an island and all the other civilizations are elsewhere, by the time you finally meet them, you are way behind because you haven't been interacting with them at all.
Yeah.
And that has put you at a disadvantage.
So, in a way, it's like, I wouldn't say the humans are, like, saving the animals or anything. If anything, it was like the humans have just basically been secluding themselves and, like, not sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. They're kind of like I'm seeing Kipo as a human, but technically the rest of the humans are their own little faction that is also keeping to themselves. Kipo is just it is singularly Kipo, and I mean then the rest of her band, but it's formed around her idea.
So because like that's one thing humans are great at is basically memeing, exchanging information with each other.
The memes, Jeff.
So it's like these creatures are pretty much brand new. I mean, they've only been around for like 200 years or so. So they haven't really had time to learn.
Need to form together.
But
they've had their own pod. Why would you ever go out of your? I'm comfortable in my bubble. Why would I ever leave it?
But humans have been around for so freaking long. It's like they can go share their experiences with everyone.
So I know I'm pretty certain we're starting to get low on time here.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with this though. Thank you.
Yeah, but I definitely there is a point that Rift I know you put here at the bottom of the notes, and I'll leave it up to you because I know I wanted to get into this here before we wrapped up. What you have down here at the bottom.
All right, yeah, I'll kick it off and then I'll pass it off to you guys to take us through the end. So one of the things that took me a long time to figure out was what the heck the title of the show meant, right? The Age of the Wonderbeasts. I'm like, where are these Wonderbeasts? Have they shown up yet? And I had a hard time understanding the words. They call mutants mutes, but I thought it was like, I can't, talk mutes kind of thing. And so I just didn't understand the word. But then I was like, where are these Wonderbeasts? And it is the name of the last episode. And that's where they mention it for the first time. It's almost a prelude that the show is. And I mentioned that it's like the video game Red Dead Redemption, where the title comes in very appropriately at the end. And it's just one of those, whoa, okay, so now it all makes sense.
Yeah, it takes a big struggle, but when you get there, it's that they're not just mutes and they're not just mega mute. Like,
they're not just beasts.
They are wonder.
They are wonder beasts. Wonder is such a more positive, imaginative-filled term, and it makes it a lot more. I feel like it's a positive term.
Now here's the big brain thinking is I always looked at this with Pokemon, where it's like, are humans technically Pokemon? And like,
have you read the Pokédex, honey?
You have opened a Pandora's box.
So
we have 2 minutes left to talk about.
So it kind of transferring this back is it's like, does Wonder Beasts also include humans? Like, they're part of that circle.
Maybe that's what a Wonder Beast is. Maybe that was the new term that could capture both quote unquote mute and human and those in between. And that's why it's the Age of Wonder Beasts.
Because we're all living, skin and blood and bones.
I'm living my beast life.
Yeah. We all animals.
Thanks for letting me die. Thanks for letting me die.
Okay, so we're just about out of time here. But I'll let you do the wrap-up, good sir.
We sure are. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Pop Culture Talk Zone with our good friend, Riftwing Designs, talking about Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts. You can check out Kipo on Netflix. I believe, like Forward said, it's like 3 seasons, 30 episodes. I think they're like around 22s. Who knows anymore? Netflix is weird. Streaming means we don't have to care about commercials anymore. With that out of the way, Riftwing Designs, what would you like to plug, pimp, or otherwise tell people about?
Stick around. I'll be streaming yoga aerobics next, and you can find me everywhere as @Riftwing Designs. And at the end of the month, I'm doing a special 2-day event with Furthermore. So it'll be a furry convention, and we're going to be doing much slower. So if you don't like this fast-paced stuff I do next, there'll be something different in 2 weeks.
Woo!
Forward. Anything you'd like to plug?
So, yep, I'm Forward Progress again. So if you like hearing from us, you can check out more from Keeping Friendship Magic. You can always, if you really like it, you can visit us on Patreon become a patron for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/KFM. You can also check out the Keeping Friendship Magic podcast that myself and Miss Nova Rose here do at kfm.buzzsprout.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
A true professional there, getting URLs right out, without barely even stuttering. Knocked it out of the park. I'm proud of you.
Indeed.
Nova Rose?
Yes, you can go find me at Twitter at Nova Roselia. I don't really have much there going on right now other than sharing strange memes. I have a bunch of projects in the works. I'm trying to get some
a follower.
Yeah, I got
coming down the pipe.
So I just got to get my technology in order. I'm slowly building up to a place I want to be, and hopefully I'll be doing art. Maybe I'll be doing streaming and VTuber stuff.
Excitement.
We'll see where everything goes.
Well, thank you. And you can catch me, Kermit the Grog, here, I guess at the Smooth Stream if that's where you're watching it. And if you're not, you can catch me and these chuckleheads usually on this very podcast, Pop Culture Talk Zone, which is under wherever you can get podcasts, Ramble Rousers, which is where these will end up, if not on the Keeping Friendship Magic YouTube page. You can also hear me interviewing my friends in that same podcast, Ramble Rousers feed, called The Grog Zone, where I interview my friends and I give them opportunities to talk about what they're about and, ask them life questions. Good time. And with that, I wish you a good day. Catch us next time on the Pod Zone, and if you're on Smooth Stream, stick around for Riff's aerobic yoga. I am very excited for that. I'll be going to get ready for that next. So, thank you,
right.
and catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
A huge thank you to our patrons, SamuDash, Jason Kuzmak, Statman Dan, NeverendingNerd, Riftwing Designs, and Frenchie McHugh. Without your support, this project wouldn't be possible.